All right, welcome to the next episode of the Wrapped Out Podcast. And this is episode 15, and we're going to be discussing Run-D.M.C's
Tougher Than Leather.
Leather.
I mean, is leather tough?
Hell yeah. It's one of the super tough.
I mean,
Could you imagine trying to rip a leather wallet.
You get the right tool, you can poke a hole through it pretty easy. Okay, it's never mind. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, maybe I would say like tougher than Teflon or something, but like, nah.
And this album came out in 1988, another album that came out when the year we were born.
And we were still not born yet, though. I think this one was August.
Yeah.
August 8th or 13th. So we were almost there. I was a month out, and you were on the way.
I was very much on the way.
November, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, before we get into it, like I said last week, I'm excited on Facebook. We hit 100 followers and everything. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for the support. Thanks for reaching out and interacting with us. But continue following us and subscribing on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube. We have our YouTube videos up for our clips. Facebook, we're active on that. Twitter, Instagram, and you can hear us on Spotify. And we're pretty much on all podcasting platforms like Stitcher, Google, and there's a few others out there. But you can find us on all of those. Yeah. You could also just go on Google and search Wrapped Out Podcast. Yeah.
Pop up.
And, I got to add, too, I mean, it's cool seeing where people are listening. So there's some people, there's some in Africa, there's some in Asia, there's some in Australia, maybe New Zealand.
We actually got a decent amount of listeners in Alaska.
Yeah. So you guys should post on Facebook and say hi. I'm kind of curious just to see how you heard of us and, chat up a little bit. But yeah, we're from California, so if you're far out, definitely reach out and say hi. I'm curious to see what you guys think and everything. So just want to put that out there. But today we're doing Tougher Than Leather. Came out in 1988.
Yeah.
Run-D.M.C.
I'm noticing, I'm starting to realize that 88 was probably one of the best years in hip hop with all the albums that came out.
It was cool. Some of the phrase that I read was, that Run-D.M.C, Public Enemy, LL Cool J were the beginners of the new school of hip hop.
And that started the golden era.
And it's cool the last couple weeks just kind of going in. It's random how, so we choose our albums at random, but the last three, when, two you all haven't heard yet, but, they've been 80s. So I don't know. It's been kind of cool to concentrate on that time period and just hear the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is Run-D.M.C's fourth album. So they're veterans pretty much at this point. They first came out in 1984. I think that's when their debut album came out. So they've been going strong for 4 years, and they put out basically 4 albums in 4 years.
Yeah.
Which is a lot. Like they were going hard in the music industry. And what's really interesting from doing the podcast on this album and listening to them all week and doing a little bit of research, I always thought that they were signed to Def Jam. I didn't realize that they weren't until I looked up this album.
This album was?
No, none of their albums were released on Def Jam. Oh. They were just close affiliates.
Because of Russell.
Yeah, so they connected with Russell, obviously because he's Run's brother, and Rick Rubin. And Rick Rubin started doing production for them. But they signed with another record label, and I believe it was a 10-record deal. Under their contract, they had to put out 10 albums.
I read a little bit on that, but I didn't read the whole thing.
Looking back at it, for them, I think by the time they got to this album, they were trying to get out of that contract because they wanted to be on Def Jam. Because they saw how well they were doing with LL Cool J, BC Boys, all that. They were killing it. And so this album came out right after they had been going to court and trying to get out of that contract, which is really interesting. I never knew about that. beforehand. I always just assumed they were on Def Jam because they're so close with everyone else on Def Jam. They did tours with Beastie Boys and LL Cool J and all that.
Yeah, it's cool. The thing that I saw too is that they were the first hip hop group to go gold. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Run-D.M.C. they have to be one of the most influential hip hop acts.
That's what they're saying. And from my standpoint, I don't know when you first started listening to them, but I've always heard of Run-D.M.C. And whenever I think of Run-D.M.C., I think of the Beastie Boys because I've actually, to be honest, I don't listen to either one of them. I never have, but I just feel like their style is very similar. But it was cool because I've always heard a lot about Jam Master Jay, so it's like, oh snap, okay, Run-D.M.C's part of it. He was their DJ, part of that era where these groups are giving a lot of praise to their DJs and stuff.
Right.
So, but it was cool.
My first time really getting into Run-D.M.C. was in high school. So I was definitely late getting into them. Of course, I heard them before then. Being in middle school, you hear them on the radio, and
we know
they're still a pop. Like, of course, everyone hears "Walk This Way."
Yeah, I was gonna say with Aerosmith, we all know about that.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest hip hop songs ever,
and that went bigger than the original song when they collabed and did that together.
Yeah, and you could almost look at that point in time as the starting point for hip hop taking over. And hip hop just in the last 2 years became the number one selling genre in music. And it took that long for that to happen. But if you look at the whole span of music in general, that's pretty quick. For 20 years for hip hop to just completely take over and become the number one genre. But I would point at Walk This Way as like the starting point for that, to really go mainstream and popular and become this genre that can take over anything else.
You think once they got in with Aerosmith, that helped them to kind of...
Yeah, you're with Aerosmith, which is one of the biggest bands back then, you're just opening yourselves up to such a wider audience. And of course, we've mentioned this before, the NWA, you open yourselves up to the wide audience, which is really large, and they have a lot of spending power. And so if you can get in with them, you're going to be infinitely bigger.
When I was listening to this album, I was thinking about I still think of the people that I don't do hip hop at all. I don't like it. When I listen to this album, I liked how they incorporated a little bit of rock as opposed to LL Cool J, where there was quite a bit of it in there.
Yeah, it's like maybe there's little hints of it on this.
There's hints of it, like maybe 2 or 3 tracks out of the 12 have predominantly rock, right? So I'm kind of curious, like the people at that time, they're just like, I just don't do this, or I think of people looking at hip hop like, oh, that's gross, that's grotesque, or anything like that. And this whole album, I didn't pick up any cuss words. The worst that I picked up was during one of Run's verses, "Dick in your mouth all day," and he didn't even say it; it was cut in.
Yeah, it was a sample.
And that's like the worst. So you kind of wonder at the time, who the people at that time who didn't like hip hop, what they were saying about it. What did you like about it? It's clean. They're not suck. There's no drug references. They're not.
It was probably they just didn't like the sound of it, and they just didn't understand rapping. Like the rapping part of it probably just didn't appeal to them.
But that's the part that I'm curious about. Is so you listen to Tougher Than Leather, and how is that any different than a rock song? It's maybe there's more lyrics compacted into it, but it's not like it's selling you on anything. It's not. I don't know. I'm kind of curious, like if those 3 tracks, why, if you're really into rock, why you wouldn't like these tracks, or maybe you do, right. But I'm just curious about that population.
That is really interesting. Yeah, I've always loved Run-D.M.C. Listening to them in high school, I remember just being okay, I'm gonna go back and listen to all of Run-D.M.C's albums and figure out why everyone loves them so much and why they're regarded as one of the best hip hop groups ever. And going back, you could totally see how they started so many trends, even with their style. You know, they're the first group to kind of go away from the flashy disco look, and they dressed more how people from the streets would dress.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely interested in Adidas.
Yeah,
and
with
that's
their
like
tracksuits
15
and
years
their
later.
Adidas shoes, and you know, the style is very much a part of hip hop. You know, that's included with your ability to rhyme and the beats and the DJ. Is you got to have good style, and they really made a point of that. And that's and with their big chains, you know, they were flashy to a degree.
Yeah, the chains, the tracksuits, the Adidas were dope. Just looking at that cover, it's dope.
Yeah, it's a cool cover. And yeah, the music that they're making, the beats that they use, is, you know, they made so many great songs over the years. Like, they have classics under their belt. And I think when this album came out, it wasn't received as well as their previous album, which is, I think, is the one that had Walk This Way on it.
Oh, okay.
And this one felt kind of like a letdown compared to that. But now, looking back on it, most people look at this as another classic album by Run-D.M.C.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at it and see what brought it up, what made it such a great album and everything.
Let's go deeper into it.
Yeah. So Tougher Than Leather, it's 12 tracks. It's about 40 minutes. I don't know, it's an easy listen. It starts you off with Run's house. I guess the first thoughts that come to mind are you have a group of 3 people and it's called Run's house. And so there's a little bit of DMC in the intro about, you know, my house, whatever. But I just thought it was interesting that it's the focus. And as you look on the album cover, Joe, you know, Run is in the forefront with the other 2 in the back. So it kind of gives you, you know, the sense of who the leader is. Also with his name in the title, but then name in the song. So it kind of made me think about that a little bit. But everyone gets props on this album. But yeah, I mean, Run's house is just like telling you what time it is. You're in our house now.
Yeah, I think it's one of their classic songs. I love this beat, and you know, they're basically staking their claim as they're still the kings of hip hop. They're still holding on to, you know, everything that they brought to the table, and they're proclaiming themselves, hey, we're still at the top. We're still the kings of the hill. Yeah, no one's overtaken us yet.
Yeah, and I like the, you know, the confidence that they exude throughout the album. You know, I don't know if it gets a little old after a while, but, you know, one of the lines incorporating producers die on reporters' claw is just basically saying we're a hot commodity. We're killing beats. Reporters want to know all about us and report everything that we're doing.
Yeah, that's a classic line. I love that line.
Yeah, it's a cool line.
I know for sure I've heard other artists sample that and put it into their songs.
There's throughout this album, just in the beats, I could tell that I've heard it before, like MC, and I was like, who was I listening to where they use that in their song? And I couldn't remember. But yeah, like speaking of like their lyrics too, you know, they're basic and they're complex at the same time. It's I don't know, getting 2 words to rhyme in the same sentence, and then the next, and then in 2, if you're looking at bar 1 and bar 2, you get 2 words to rhyme in the first part of it, both bars, and then at the end of them, you know, those 2 rhyme. And so I like the way some of it is like, it's just not a whole lot going on. It's just like a thought, and then it goes on to the next one.
Right.
It's like I don't want to say like a fleeting thought, but it's nothing. You're not going to get a lot of depth out of this album. But it's cool the way that they string words together and make it fun. It's fun.
I think, like you said, it's an easy listen. You're not going to be listening to the lyrics and trying to decipher like a Black Thought song.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you can listen to this maybe 2 or 3 times and know everything that they're talking about. Maybe some of the references might be outdated, and someone like you or I may not understand fully what they're referencing because we weren't growing up at that time. But beyond that, you know, it's a fairly straightforward album.
Yeah,
but I don't think that takes away from them.
Not at all.
Because that's their identity. And at this point in hip hop, most artists weren't full on lyricists yet. I would say the most advanced lyricist at this time was Rakim. Mm-hmm. And he pretty much took lyricism to a whole new level, using metaphors and similes and doing rhymes inside of rhymes and getting more complex.
And I think that's what's happening here is that maybe because of, the time frame that we grew up in, when you hear all these words put together, you're usually getting set up for a metaphor. Mm-hmm. They're not doing that here. They're just putting rhymes together that make sense for that sentence, and then they move on to the next thing. It's just putting a bunch of things together.
It's just dope rhymes.
It is.
One of the lines that I like is causing casualties and catastrophes and tragedies for the sucker MCs, using strategies to get the best of me.
Yeah.
So it's a simple idea, but the rhymes are dope. There's rhymes
dope.
inside of rhymes.
But it's saying so much right there too. Like everything that's saying is like, any MC that comes to me, like I'm putting them in their place, but I'm also looking to strategize to promote myself and to do better. So it's a lot of, you're just thinking of like, well, what rhymes with strategy, tragedy, travesty? Okay, cool. But it still all makes sense, and it fits the context of what they're doing. They're putting themselves on the map. They're letting you know what they're all about. So it all comes together, even though it's very simple.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like it could be done in some game where it's like take 5 words that rhyme together and make a sentence and try to make it make sense.
Right.
And I'm not saying that this album is a game and I'm not watering it down, but that's, I don't know, in a lame way of saying that, I guess. So, but yeah, and as we keep jumping into these 80s albums, I keep picking up on the whole, these girls just come. It's ongoing even to today's time.
For sure.
Mary Mary, track number 2, it's, about a girl that's like just
now that you say that, I can kind of see the transition from the 80s songs that we've heard from LL Cool J and NWA and Run-D.M.C. of calling out girls for not liking them, or you need to get with me because I can offer more than the other person, or like on Mary Mary, why you bugging? What's wrong with you? Now it's turned into I'm gonna steal your bitch. I don't give a fuck. She's mine. Like it's a little bit. It's same concept, different attitude, different way of going about it.
Yeah, it's that's such an interesting thought. Like, if you look at it as in purely from music, and if you were to just go from music to music and just erase all of real, quote unquote, real life, and so like, okay, how do we build onto this? So these women are just coming in, we're having relationships with them at first, but then we're being taken advantage of. And so now it becomes a commodity of like going to these shows, we're attracting these women. Hey, we were ugly as fuck at once. Now these girls are coming in. So now they're becoming objects because it's like a show of flexing on people with like what you have around them. Like, look at all these girls that I have. Look at all these chains that I have. Look at all this.
Right. Exactly.
The relationship's thrown out the window. So kind of to build on to what you're saying, I can definitely see the evolution of like that objectification of women, because in these early albums it really is like, hey, this girl's around me and she's taking my shit, like, and I don't like it, fuck off. Right. And then going to, well, this is what we want to have, we want these girls, but then so it's an interesting evolution.
Mary Mary is, I thought it was interesting the way the song started. It started with the beat from the previous song from Run's House. The first 20 or 30 seconds, it's the same drum beat, and then it switches to the Mary Mary beat. I was thinking, like, why did they do that? Because Mary Mary, I think, was the first single.
Okay.
So why would you put a drum beat from a previous song on a single? That's, I don't know. I just was thinking about that. What was the thinking there?
Yeah.
What was the point of that? To leave that drum beat in? And they didn't do that on any of the other songs.
It was just like that straight transition from track to track.
Yeah.
I don't think I caught that, but
yeah,
definitely good observation.
Maybe that wasn't on the single version for Mary Mary. I'm not sure, but yeah, I just thought that was a little bit interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, Mary Mary was cool, but it's just kind of, as we were saying, just interesting to think about that evolution of women becoming objects.
Has a little bit of that rock in there.
Yeah.
Rock element. They sampled the Monkees.
Yeah. And, throughout the album, you get these glimpses of, not glimpses, it's almost the majority of the album of just them pushing themselves out. And like, this is who we are. We're not to be messed with.
Yeah.
Lyrically. They're, that's the other
But they do have lyrics against being a gangster.
They do. Yeah. Was that?
Not
Beats?
this song, but on this album.
Yeah, because I can't remember the track, which one it was. If it wasn't Beats to Rhyme, it was Radio Station.
Yeah.
But yeah, just saying like not that type of gang.
They're not trying to come off as like tough thugs or drug dealers or gang members or anything like that. They're just trying to come off tough in the sense of
being an MC. Like that's part of the culture.
Knowing
just like,
who
I'm the
they
best.
are.
Yeah.
And knowing their abilities in this craft, they can't be messed with.
Yeah. And that's where, they call us Run-D.M.C. That's where the basis of this song is. I really liked, how DMC was talking about, I got a crown, I wear, what it mean, I rule. And I just thought it was kind of cool. Like, because throughout the album, and then even I think a verse before that, he was saying like I'm a king or whatever else, but like I wear this crown because I rule. This is what it means for me to have this crown.
I like this song a lot. I love the Slick Rick sample. I kind of miss that. I mean, obviously, still some producers do that today, but I miss back then of them sampling other rappers to fill in lines or to make a chorus out of other rappers' lines from other artists. I just think that's really dope.
Yeah, and they did that a little bit in the next track, Beats to Rhyme.
Oh man, this might be my favorite song on the album.
I think so too.
Yeah.
The beat's dope.
That beat could come out today and be fire.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So ahead of its time. The sample, I love that sample. It's called Nautilus, and I've heard many other artists sample it. Just because it's such a dope sample, like the little, like that little, like that sound.
What was it?
I don't think I could recreate it again. But yeah, I love that sample. It's such a hard track, and they did a really good job on it.
Yeah, and it's cool that how they rhyme together.
Yeah.
In parts too.
Switching off. That's another thing I miss. Not too many, obviously, because there's not as many hip hop groups nowadays.
Yeah.
But I miss that trading off of bars. BC Boys mastered that. 3 artists, they'll trade lines between the 3 of them throughout the whole song on some of them.
Yeah, but I mean, not only about just them trading off and going back and forth. I'm talking about them like going in at one time.
Gotcha. Together.
Together.
Gotcha.
I mean, I could only imagine at a show just them like both mics in hand and just going in like that. That I bet the energy from that is crazy.
I wish I could have seen Run-D.M.C. I feel like that would have been such a great show.
It would have been cool, man. But yeah, it's just that the whole Beats to Rhyme, just the style that they do is just cool overall. And they kind of it's cool that they both have a similar rap style.
Yeah.
It's not like putting Crooked Eye and Joe Budden on the same track. It's, kind of like I would say in terms of complimenting each other,
right.
Eminem and Royce or Royce and Crooked. It's one
they're
could be
pretty,
better than the other.
Yeah, they're
fairly
similar.
They're similar, yeah.
Yeah.
They're similar enough. I think Run probably has more rhymes. I don't know which one. I like them both equally.
I agree. I think Run had a little bit more complex rhymes.
Yeah.
And DMC, he has great lines as well, but it's just not as complex. But he has great delivery and great energy and all that. But yeah, I would give it to Run in terms of lyricism.
Yeah, when I was reading about DMC, he was more into athletics, and then he eventually began writing and then joined in. But it sounded like
it's got that like competitive spirit.
Yeah.
In the way that he rhymes.
But yeah, Beats to Rhyme was cool. Radio Station, radio station's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was a dope beat. You know, this song is about them still being able to dominate the radio, to be on the radio. You know, 4 albums in, because we have to remember at this point, this is so early on in hip hop. I don't think any of the artists when they first started out in the early to mid 80s expected to have a long career. So for Run-D.M.C. to go from 1984 and then go to the first hip hop group going gold, and then to this 4th album, I think to them it's still a crazy thing for them to be as big as they are in hip hop, or to have their career as long as they've had it. Because back then artists didn't last that long in hip hop. It was very flash in the pan. You know?
I mean, you think about it. I mean, I'm willing to be wrong on this, but how many 80s hip hop people carried on into the 90s? Because when I think of the 90s, I think of a whole slew of different people. You had NWA, you had Nas, you had Biggie, you had Pac, you had some Public Enemy, you had, I mean...
You had artists,
it's just like this new wave that dominated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Rakim and Cool G Rap didn't last too long into the 90s. I mean, they went into like the mid 90s, but their career didn't go all the way through, you know? Yeah, there's probably so many artists in the 80s that, you know, didn't make it. Like you said, Schoolie D comes to mind. He was a big artist in the 80s. I don't think he went into the 90s. You know, and I'm sure there's so many of those that we just don't hear about, or we forget about. So yeah, so for Run-D.M.C. to be going this far is pretty crazy.
It was cool. And, you know, to be, you know, 4th album in and still being considered one of the pioneers for the new wave before it changed again.
Right.
And pretty cool.
Yeah, and hip hop's going at such a rapid pace back then too, and it's evolving so quickly.
Yeah, one of the lines I like, I'm gonna try it. Radio station around the nation, Run-D and Jason made a dedication to those listening. We're not dissing them, recording and rewarding, so we won't be missing them. I just like that they changed the style just a little bit, just how they chopped it up.
Yeah,
I really like that, and just, I mean, I don't know, I'm cheesing right now, but I just I really liked that how they incorporated a different style by also by doing the same thing. It's just a slight tweak, but you know, just, you know, kind of going what we're saying, like we're still going to be around here. We're not dissing anybody, but you know. But then, I don't know, recording a warning so we won't be missing them. Like, if as we're working on stuff, we're not missing the radio because we're still getting playtime, like we're still relevant. So I thought it's cool. I liked it.
Yeah, dope track. And then that goes into Papa Crazy.
Papa Crazy kind of threw me off a little bit because in the beginning it's talking about, you know, fur coat, riches and stuff. So I was like, are they talking about a pimp? But then the second verse with Run, he's talking about his dad being successful. And then DMC talking about his dad, like, he left me at 3. And, you know, he was kind of a punk, but he died. Yeah. So it just kind of moved me around in different areas. Maybe I just didn't understand that first verse and I interpreted it differently.
Yeah, it was an interesting song in the sense of the sound of it. Like, the beat was very, like, lighthearted and bright. For the content that was pretty dark. But it almost seemed like the way that they're rapping about it was lighthearted. Like they're kind of making a joke about it, or
and
kind of being a little tongue-in-cheek about it. It wasn't so serious.
And I like that, you know, like you said, making light of a situation. I mean, growing up, there's plenty of times where you're in a troubled spot and you have to shape it a little bit to make it livable, doable. No, that's temporary. Yeah, but it's growing from an experience.
Right,
so.
And they're pointing out, you know, their dads doing whatever they're doing and then not being there for them. You know, either they're out making money and going out with different girls every night and partying instead of being a dad. But I didn't get a sense of any anger or resentment or anything like that.
They've come to terms with it, and that's what I think is cool is, you know, maybe you could... you know, we all have something where we've lived through something, we've overcome it. Someone's going through the same thing. So we're like, yeah, man, it sucks at first, but you'll get through this and you'll be fine. So that's to build on what you're saying. I got a lot of those feels of, dude, my dad sucked, but it's okay. Like he did this, he lived his life, he died a bum, but I'm okay. I'm okay and I'm fine with it.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's not. If I'm skipping any of the tracks on this album, I think it is this one. I just didn't really.
Yeah, I think you only really need to listen to this one once, and you're good.
Yeah, there's parts of it that are fun, but yeah, I just wasn't really my thing. But maybe that, you know, dealing with all those dad things is what made them tougher than leather. Maybe one of the elements. Wow, nice segue, sir.
Making the connection.
Yeah, but you know, the album track, these ones are always of interest to me. But this one was, I don't know. I like to listen to the album a little bit and then take a look at the lyrics.
Yeah.
When I take a look at the lyrics, the first word that came to mind was convoluted. Yeah. There's just a lot of stuff going on lyrically in there. And you know how we were saying earlier that you put these rhymes together and then you move on to the next one? I think what makes it a little bit more digestible is that their verses are a lot shorter. They're only a couple bars each, and then it goes on to the next one. But in this one, you have them going on for a long time.
Yeah, I wrote that too. The song was too long. They didn't need to go for 4 verses. You know,
four long verses.
Yeah, long verses.
But you know, and that's the other part too. I don't even know if I want to say longer verses. Longer in the sense of a comparison to their other tracks. But yeah, it just got a little long for me. So I think with that style of having a bunch of stuff, you know, sentence, move on, sentence, move on, it was kind of too much for me for this song. So.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of this song. I don't think the hard rock with the rap aged very well. And it's interesting because other songs on this album did age really well.
So when you say... What do you
when I say that when I'm listening to this, I'm not putting myself in the context of being in 1988. I'm listening it today from my ears as I am right now. Where I'm not gonna go back to the song and be really into it with the hard rock element to it. It just doesn't sound good to me. It doesn't fit, and it doesn't fit on this album. You know, it's almost like they got Rick Rubin to do some beats for them with the hard rock samples just to carry on a few things that they did on the last album that was really successful. But then at the same time, they wanted to change the direction and go more sample based. So this album almost seems like a mixture of the two. Instead of going all the way into samples and changing the direction of the music, they still brought on that rock element when they didn't really need to.
I have some thought. I mean, what do I think about that? I think when I think of all the genres of music that are most popular, one of the top ones that comes to mind is 80s rock, 80s classic rock. And so when I hear this now in 2020, I'm like, okay, like that's kind of cool that they jumped in and experimented with that. I would argue that it aged well from a hip hop loving perspective, thinking of what rock was like in the 80s. Yeah. So I think of it as like, well, I didn't really listen to a lot of 80s rock, but if this is what it was like, that's actually really interesting. And I'm not saying you're not saying that it isn't, but for me, it's kind of like, okay, cool. Like maybe I would... It made me kind of curious about other 80s rock. But what I liked about this, though, is that throughout their verses, it kept... I can't describe it, but I like how it played out. Yeah. But then the chorus changed. So you're not listening to the same rock beat throughout the entire song. Right. So I kind of like the way that... I like what they did with it. I like that it was laid out. But also, too, I like that they did the rock in small doses. So this was the first. I agree. I can see where you're coming from when you say it kind of is out of place, because the first. What track is this? This is track number
5 or 6?
7.
7. Okay.
So the first 6, it's all hip hop, and then you have this rock track, and so. In it being that it's in a small dose, I'm okay with it, because it's like, okay, that's like a you.
It didn't throw you off by it being in the middle of the album.
Yeah, I agree. Where, I mean, this is gonna be a weird question, but where could they have placed it if they could have placed it somewhere else?
No, I think the middle was the right place to put it.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't throw you off by it being in the middle of the album. Because you have the sample-based songs before it, and then you throw in a little rock one, and then you go back to your other songs. But there's a few other rock songs after this one.
Yeah, I like how the album kind of throws me around a little bit. Just, whether they change their flow up in one song or they implement a different type of beat for one song. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'm thinking of when we did LL Cool J, because it was all rock for the most part. And I was kind of like, okay, like I'm not really feeling it. I'm listening to this for hip hop, not for hip rock. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. But cool track.
And then we go into I'm Not Going Out Like That. This is a really dope track. I really like the beat on this and the samples. One of my favorite lyrics from this one is, fate for God's sake, a break is at stake. Crack, whack, smack, you right back. In fact, you might last a jack if I crack. Dope rhymes right there.
Yeah.
A lot of rhymes inside of rhymes.
Just bars. And there's a lot of energy in this song too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. A little bit of anti-drug and the drug sentiments in the lyrics. When they say crack is whack, smack you right back. So if you do crack, you're being whack, and it's going to hit you right back. If you do that, you're going to get instant karma for doing that to yourself.
Yeah, and they also say, to add to that, cry, lie, do, or just die. Live positive and give, but that's why I'm not. Sorry, I didn't mess it up, but I gave the first lyric first. But it's interesting how, they're shutting down drugs, and that's a huge part. That was a big part of the 80s, was the crack epidemic.
Yeah.
And so
they grew up around it. They've seen it firsthand. They know what it does to people, and now they're speaking out against it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's dope. What was the other one? See a man like you didn't just say this one. See a man like me, your idol. So joke, smoke, toke, but this title, the rhyme is mine, fine, so vital. It's time for me to rock my recital. So I don't know. I think of in other tracks that we've listened to where like the dope man is he's the man. He's on the block. He's got money. He's got it. And I feel like in that lyric is kind of the equivalent of that, but without the trouble that comes along with it. Like, I didn't have to sell dope. I don't have to put myself in danger to have that type of status. I'm good.
Right.
I'm good the way I am.
Yep.
So, I don't know, plain, sane refrain, just peep it, look, see it, check it, but never stop it. Sorry, I messed that up again. But, just sticking with it. So,
it's a dope track. The only thing I would say about this one is that it's a little bit too long. The hip hop back then, I just think they did a little bit too. The songs were a little bit too long. They're going for 4 or 5 minutes. I think you can trim down and do one less verse each, and get more straight to the point with what you're trying to say.
So that just made me think. We were talking about how in most of their tracks, their verses are very short, and then they skip over to the next person. Do you think that's what makes this album, songs like this, kind of like, that's too long, because they set us up for the first 7 tracks of short verses,
right? And that could be, you're not totally used to them, these longer songs where they have longer verses and they're going on they're carrying out their ideas a little bit longer. I think that could be they're setting you up for something else, at the beginning of the album.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think, when you have a formula and you kind of stray from it, you can mix reactions. And I think in this, I was asking that because I think in this case, that's why I think I'm not, when they do have longer verses, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm kind of over it now. Like I just lose interest.
Right.
Because I'm okay with those short bursts. Mm-hmm. And then you move on to the next one. But when
especially, the rhymes are cool, but they're not so captivating. They're not going to make you sit and think where you want to, like I think you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, where the lyrics are just fleeting thoughts almost. They're not lyrics leading up to a whole bigger idea.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing that I have to pay attention to in depth. You're just putting rhymes together. So if you're going for this extended verse,
you can compare it to, an artist of today. We mentioned him earlier, Black Thought. You could listen to Black Thought rhyme for 10 minutes straight because what he's spitting, it keeps your attention the whole time. Mm-hmm. And you want to hear what the next bar is going to be. Yeah. How crazy it's going to be. And even when he's spitting the next bar, you're still thinking about the previous 2 bars and you're trying to connect it in your head.
Yeah. So there's an incentive to go back because there's it's like peeling back. I hate onions, but you're peeling back this onion because, or garlic even, where you're trying to get all the skin off. It's like, oh shit, I didn't get that. I have to go back to it. So yeah, it was here and there. It was all right.
Yeah. So. And then after that, we go into How'd You Do It, D?
How'd you do it, D? How'd you do it?
Yeah, interesting way to start the song. It starts off with almost like spoken rhymes, not necessarily rhyming. Mm-hmm. It's more like spoken word poetry, which I thought is pretty cool. It mixes it up a little bit. And then it's Run and DMC going back and forth, trading bars really quickly.
And
to that style.
And if I'm remembering right, this is like where they kind of give some props to Jam Master Jay in this one too, I believe.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was a fun song. I don't know if I'm gonna revisit it as much as some of the other songs in this album, but yeah, it was a cool song for me.
Yeah, it was short, and so it's just one of those ones I kind of breeze by and don't really go back again. But
yeah,
and then so we were talking about the different rock tracks. Now we have Missy Lane, and that one went pretty rock.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I think I don't know why, but the first song that comes to mind is like "Dude Looks Like a Lady" kind of thing. But just that rock, the energy, just talking about someone, using rock to talk about your crush, school teacher that they really liked.
Yeah, or that song "Cherry Pie."
Yeah,
it's cheesy, and I read a little bit about the history of this album and making it. And Missy Lane, it was one of the songs that the group members had a disagreement about.
Oh.
Where, I forget who it was, but one of them wanted to put this song on the album to do just that, make a rock song like a Cherry Pie or Dude Looks Like a Lady, to capture that audience again, to be on the radio and be a hit in the same vein as those other songs. While the other members are like, hey, we're doing more sample-based songs and it's more hip-hop. This doesn't really fit in with us anymore.
Would you argue the term selling out at all?
Yeah, with this song, yeah. I think it's a pure play for the radio.
And I mean that in the sense of trying to reach out to a particular audience. Like, hey, the only way we'll be successful is we hit the white audience with this sound.
And, I could understand both points, and I could understand why them conceding and putting this on there. Just like, oh, it's just one song. We can throw it on there. We got a whole other album. We got the rest of the album of dope tracks. We can throw this in there, and no harm, no foul. So I could understand that as well. Like, oh, okay, if it does sell 1 million records, I'll take the money. But it's not going to kill us to have this one song on this album. But also at the same time, this album wasn't received as well as their previous 3 albums when it came out. Maybe because of this song.
What, this was one of their singles, or?
I don't know if it was an actual single. I can look that up, but yeah, I don't know.
See that. Yeah, I don't know. I think Missy Lane, I think it's cool to have those songs about their. How do I want to say that?
It was not a single.
Okay.
The singles were Run's House, Mary Mary, and I'm Not Going Out Like That. So maybe the group decided after all that they didn't want to go forward with that song as a single to go in that direction.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I do appreciate songs that, there's certain ideas. Like, we've all had a teacher. Well, I'll speak for myself, but I've had a teacher that they were like, hey man, she's attractive, she's cool. But I can't say that there's an enormous amount of songs about that topic.
Yeah.
It's usually about like someone that you see around or whatever else. But Soul to Rock and Roll was the next track. Second to last track.
Yep.
What'd you think about it?
I thought it had some interesting songs, and again they're speaking out against drugs. Like these lines is say it isn't this fly, how can you get down? Black bone to the hand, giving up the hug. Crack known to the fans, say no to drugs. Got a lot of ambitions, as I was told. Now the heart stop wishing for you before you get old. Got to speech and teach, reach for your goal. We the king here to bring with a lot of soul. So speaking out a little bit against drug use and promoting, self-worth and going after your goals before you get too old and stuff like that. So a lot of positivity, which, I think is always good to put out in music.
It's a nice mix of, I feel like this is one of those that would silence the haters or people that may not be, that may be on the levels of, hip hop's not for me because it's very pro-black. And I'm not saying this in a bad way. But this is a very neutral album that anyone could really get on board with. So if you feel like, well, I don't really connect with a lot of that stuff, then okay, I guess this is one of those albums that you could check out then. So it's just, I don't know, subtle things like, say no to drugs that anyone could agree with. There's no misogyny of women. There's no, none of that.
Yeah, it's interesting back then that there was quite a bit of hip hop that was, I wouldn't say censored, but aware of the lyrics that they're putting out. Whereas today, I think artists don't have to care as much about that. It's almost as if the more derogatory and raunchy and the more you speak about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that whole thing, the more popular you're going to be, the more records you're going to sell.
Yeah, it's also just gotten to the point where it's normalized. There's nothing at this point that you can't say that would be throwing people off.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think of like Katy Perry and her coming out with like Kissed a Girl, and I don't know. It's like that. At the time, it's like, oh my God, that's crazy that you put that in a song. But now you can put that. You can, if she were to drop that now, it's 2020. Be like, oh okay, like cool.
Yeah, so, no one would say anything about it.
Yeah. Last but not least, Ragtime.
Then we end with Ragtime.
Very
interesting way to end the album.
I'd say. I mean, it jumps around a little bit. It goes from, talking about how they just all these rhymes all the time, and I don't know what to do with them.
It was just like the beat. I think is really funny. It's it's like they're storytelling. They're talking about their day, and the beat. It almost sounds like you're at a theme park or something. You're like watching like a show or something. And
I just went to Universal Studios back in February, and it makes me think of the Simpsons part of the park, especially when they bring in the trumpet. I don't know what part But yeah, I'm just like, yeah, I do feel like I'm in a theme park when I hear this song.
Yeah.
But they're telling like a funny story, like you said, about their day or what's going
Yeah,
on around
it
them.
just seems like they're having fun on this one. And I think to end the album this way was them just kind of not taking themselves too seriously. Just like, oh yeah, we're putting out another dope album and we're still the kings of hip hop. But you know, we're doing it our way. Like we're going to put out whatever songs we want, basically. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about the album, right? I mean, it's a fun album. There's not a lot of content to it. It's mostly, you know, 4 albums in, like, we're the kings, we got this, don't mess with us. You know, certain MCs suck, whatever else.
Yeah.
I like the subtle say no to drugs, but it's kind of like it's an interesting. I'm gonna use the word role model, but it's interesting looking at them. Like, I'm on the block and I'm not the dope man though. I still have all this. I don't do drugs. I don't do anything, and like I'm still a respectable, successful person. And so I really like that message that could be conveyed to its listeners, because like I've said in the intro and parts of other podcasts, that's the part that I would want to change about people, and this is another one of those. Right. So but
Run-D.M.C for me is always a fun listen. They're always gonna have dope beats, dope rhymes. You're not gonna have to think too hard. You can put it on in the background and just let it rock. But for me, I'd have to say for this album, I'm not going to listen to the whole album. I'm going to pull tracks from it and put it on a playlist. You know, I'm going to pull out Beats to the Rhyme, of course. You know, that could go on so many playlists. Even it would fit with today's music, I think. You could put that in a playlist with, you know, 15 other dope hip-hop songs from the last couple of years, and it would fit right in.
I think the first one that comes to mind is my mom does not like any cuss words in music. And she'll not make a scene, but you know, she makes it known that, hey, they just said something. Yeah. So it's kind of cool listening to this album because you can put out good music without having cuss words in it. So if I'm working with clients, because I work with special needs and autistic kids. So if I wanted to put on some hip hop, I feel like I can put on Run-D.M.C in the background and not have to worry about, you know, whatever.
Censoring.
About censoring. Because when you put on a censored album, it's just not the same. But with this, it's, you know, there's nothing in here that they're talking about that would, you know, or let me go back a little bit. Even in a censored album, the themes that they talk about can be bad and it's still there. Right. Nothing in this album that has been said, there's nothing that can be censored, but anything else that's said is not something you'd be like, hey, you didn't hear that. They're talking about drugs. They didn't say heroin or shooting up. They're not even talking about drugs. So I could play this. I could play this around my mom. I could play it around the kids that I'm working with. Yeah. I could also. I would play this in the background. You know, like let's say there's a party at the house. There's people from all different works and backgrounds. I can play that, and it just has a little bit of rock in there. And it's just it's an all right sound. It's not. I'm going to go on record and just say it's not like the greatest thing I've heard. It's not fantastic, but it's a good listen. Yeah. It's a good listen.
Yeah, it's a cool listen. If you're into hip hop and you're into the history of it and you want to know how it went from where it did in the late 70s to today, you have to listen to Run-D.M.C because they are part of that evolution. They helped change the landscape of hip hop and change the sound and the image of it. And this may not be their best album that they've released, but it is a dope album and it's got some classic songs on there.
I would agree with that. So, but yeah, so you're pulling tracks out. You're not really listening.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna, you know, play. I don't know if I would play this song or this whole album for other people, but I would definitely pull tracks. It's like, hey, you need to listen to this. Like Beats to the Rhyme. This is a classic beat. It's dope rhymes. Run's House. That's another classic song. So yeah, that's how I'll be playing it.
Yeah, and it's cool to, you know, listen to what in general, it's just cool to listen to what's considered a classic, just so you can have your own thoughts on it and see what role it played in such an integral time, especially in music. This is the late 80s where it was about to transition.
Yeah.
And this is one of the building blocks that created that foundation.
Oh, yeah.
So it's cool.
Awesome. So, yeah, that's our rap thoughts on Run-D.M.C's Tougher Than Leather. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for subscribing and following us on all of the podcasting platforms and social media. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Like us on Facebook. Give us a shout. Add us on Twitter. Get in our comments on Instagram. We love to interact with you guys. We're on there. We don't post a ton, but we're definitely on there paying attention, and we definitely want to hear from you guys. And for the listeners that are our age or younger,
30s,
and you haven't, thanks for giving away our age, bro.
Sensitive.
I'm kidding. If you want to go back and listen to hip hop from the 80s, you can definitely listen to this album or any other album by Run-D.M.C. and really get a sense of how dope hip hop was back then. And you can see the building blocks for how hip hop became what it is today. So Run-D.M.C. is definitely one of those groups that you need to do your homework on.
I'm doing it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Peace.
Thanks, y'all.